Time now to have a chat to the Chief Executive of Harness Racing Victoria with a big announcement made about the future of the sport here in Victoria and what it will look like as far as the calendar is concerned. And of course, for every code, not just harness racing, we've been talking a lot about it in the world of thoroughbreds and also in greyhounds. Money is of the essence. With revenue turnover down, we need to find ways to save money and streamline the sport. And this is exactly what Harness Racing Victoria is doing. Matt, great to see you in the studio. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. Good morning, listeners.
So for all of the harness racing fans and especially the participants who are great listeners and fans of RSN, just give a snapshot and an example or an explanation of what this means.
Yeah, so yesterday we announced some changes to our racing calendar that ultimately were guided by three principles. Principle one, we needed to increase revenue from our calendar. People betting on the sport is ultimately how harness racing and the other two codes here in Victoria and the other states and how we're funded. So that's critical. We wanted to decrease the harness racing's cost to put the show on. So whether that's the cost for Harness Racing Victoria or the cost for clubs and the cost for our participants as well. And thirdly, it was around participant welfare. We wanted to ensure that our participants, our drivers and our trainers were minimising the risks of a night time on the road and making sure that we were putting them in a position that they were travelling closer to their home base. And importantly, the three principles are also designed from a source of data. So it was a data-driven strategy. And
just on that, the research and the background to coming up with this plan, as you said, it was an independent study that was done with a lot of consultation and feedback.
Yeah, that's right. So over the last sort of 6 to 9 months, we'd worked with a combination of Victorian government, the Office of Racing, Harness Racing Victoria, with the support of Ernst & Young to develop a current state analysis of harness racing here in Victoria and what some of the options would be for the future. So the racing calendar was a key component of that. We don't have many levers to drive growth, but where we race is a key lever. So some of the recommendations that were put forward were very difficult to implement. So we've come up with a compromise here, ultimately, that puts us in a position that we believe showcases the best version of ourselves. So where we race, particularly under lights, for harness racing, I think it's one of our superpowers. The horse racing looks great under lights, and harness racing's been an incredible. It looks incredible under lights. The sweat reflecting off the horses, etc. So we're racing at our key tracks every night of the week, with Melton anchoring obviously on Saturday nights. So our key tracks being Ballarat, Bendigo, Geelong, Shepparton, Cranbourne, Kilmore, Ballarat, if I haven't mentioned Ballarat there. So there are key race tracks under lights, supported also with Terang on Monday nights once a month. So we have designed it around those key anchor points, and then the medium or smaller clubs will obviously operate during the day, with some key tracks like Maryborough and Charlton still maintaining their level of presence that they've historically maintained, because that's where our horse population is, where our participants are, and that's really important that we're racing where they are to minimise their travel.
So some of the major calendar changes, and it's all been done to reduce costs and maximise revenue, and also for punters to give them some familiarity and certainty as to where meetings are being run.
Well, that's exactly right. When we've gone through this consultation, we've worked with wagering service providers to understand their views on how we should be running the sport. And I don't think you have to look too far. We look at greyhound racing here in Victoria, who have done a remarkable job over 10 years, and they have a very structured calendar. Whereas we asked ourselves the question even back in April, and asked the question of participants that, where would we be racing the following Wednesday? And nobody knew. And they were all the club managers at the time. So the reality was that in April, we hadn't raced at the same location at any stage on a Wednesday night this year. So to give confidence around, one, our punters, who is the customer ultimately for harness racing, to where we're racing, getting familiar with the drivers, the trainers, the horse population in that area is really important to drive for consistency, and consistency will drive revenues.
So for the punters, participants out there, the calendar will look like Tuesday nights Shepparton, Wednesday nights Bendigo, Ballarat Kilmore sharing Thursday nights, Melton, Geelong and regional cups will share Friday nights. Melton and major cups will be on Saturday nights and Cranbourne on Sunday. Regular day racing on Wednesday afternoons at Maryborough or Charlton, and Friday afternoon racing at Mildura as well. So this is done for planning, for people who want to know where they're going to be racing on a regular basis. And as you mentioned, the travel is something that punters probably don't think about in harness racing, because the participants travel a hell of a long way with their horses. Night meetings have been the lifeblood and the backbone of harness racing long before night racing came in for the thoroughbreds.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And we need to ensure that we have naturally a lot of outlying clubs that are some way away from where our, I guess if we heat mapped the participant population, they're a long way away. There's a lot of travel involved, and there's one particularly outlying club. I won't mention the name because I don't want to be seen picking on it, but we've reduced that club currently from 12 meetings per year to 6. But it'll also save, based on last year's attendance of trainers and drivers, some 80,000 kilometres for our participants just by reducing 6 race meetings. So when we're all challenged in a cost of living crisis, I don't know if we're referring to it as a crisis anymore, but it's certainly challenging, and the cost of delivering our product is challenging for our participants. We want to ensure that we can help where we can, and minimising one of the highest cost exposures they have, and that's the cost of fuel and running their trucks and their vehicles.
How much is the new look racing calendar projected to save the industry?
So there's 2 parts to it. So we're projected to save operationally around $2 million in synergies over the next 12 months. Not all of that will be realised because we've had to make some compromises through this racing calendar. But the turnover side of it, the revenue growth side of it's an incremental $1 million. And to put that in perspective, we have to drive turnover by $35 million in what is a declining market to generate $1 million in income.
Gee.
So that's how hard we all have to work across all the codes to generate an income.
What does that mean for the sustainability of prize money moving forward?
Yeah, that's a good question. So prior to this announcement from clubs, phase 1 of our announcement was some internal changes. We've announced around $7.5 million in cost out initiatives at Harness Racing Victoria over the next 24 months.
So that's admin costs?
That's admin costs. That's finding a more efficient way to do things. So we're going to continue to work on that. That is about making sure that we're just doing more with less, essentially. We've resized our workforce over the last 14 months by around 25%. So that's either people that have left the business or roles that we have not re-recruited for, or roles that we've reshaped. So we've been quite active over the last 12, 14 months, making sure we set HRV up to be the most efficient that it can be. Clubs were the next focus, and ultimately we want to be able to drive revenue. We want to be able to re-engage the punter, and we want to be able to ultimately put ourselves in a position that we can stimulate growth. And as I touched on before, where we race is a key part of that. And the third part, and ultimately everything we're doing that I've just spoken about is to try and preserve returns to participants where possible. But we're working through the right optimisation of that at the moment, and we'll continue to liaise and with our stakeholders, with the industry on that. But it's no doubt that we're challenged, but we think that there's some better ways than we've done historically, than we've had historically there. So, in the next couple of months, we'll work through that with our key kindred bodies and our broader stakeholder network.
No club likes losing meetings, but are we currently living in a different landscape to what we did decades before, when we had heaps of country race clubs?
Well, I think we are. I think we all look around that once upon a time, there was probably only one game in town on a Saturday night, and it happened out here at the showgrounds, and harness racing was it. It was a big part of obviously the social fabric that happened not just in Melbourne but broader Victoria. And I don't want to underestimate the importance that harness racing has for our regional communities, which is incredibly important. But we need to ensure that, and my role is to ensure the sustainability and future success of harness racing. And I want to ensure that we have the right balance to drive growth, to drive revenue, to reinvest in the sport, and then to also ensure that we have the representation at a community level, providing that the local communities want to get behind harness racing. We want to ensure that we're there supporting that. If local communities, the volunteer, the club, the local government in those areas are all supporting, we're certainly there to support. So, we'll continue to work with clubs around what the future looks like and the shape of the delivery of our product into the future.
You mentioned showgrounds. There was an SMS here saying that previously there had been some talk of a push to return to the showgrounds. Is that not on the table now?
Certainly not on the table for us at the moment. I think from a funding standpoint that it's not a priority, I think, for the Victorian government at this particular point, nor is it for harness racing here in Victoria, as a harness race in Victoria at this point in time. But never say never. I'm not going to rule that out. We'd all love to be back there. But I think prior to my time, Michael, there was a lot of work done on that. There was analysis on some of these heritage listed buildings over at the showgrounds that become very difficult for the size of track that would be expected to be put in there now to be able to run the times, to be able to benchmark globally on the performance of our standardbred horses.
So for the listeners who love having a bet on harness racing and probably even more importantly those who earn a living out of harness racing here in Victoria, what do you say to them about the future of the sport and how it's looking?
Well, I think we've got here in Victoria, we have got the what I believe are the best participants. We have the best trainers, the best drivers. We have an incredible next generation of trainers and drivers coming through. We're competing not just here in Victoria against each other. We're taking our horses to New Zealand. We've had Jess Tubbs and Greg Sugars competing over there with Just Believe, who's a world-class trotter. It's won the last two Group 1s over in New Zealand, including Friday night, one of the Group 1s at Auckland. They actually trained and drove the double there with the Auckland Pacing Cup with Better Eclipse. So, we have incredible participants here. We have what I believe are the best breeding barns of Australia with our breeders. So we have a lot to be really excited about for the future. And our role is to continue to, my role and the role of my team is to continue to support that and facilitate and foster that growth.
And just one last one. Obviously, I think speaking to Ryan Phelan last week, there's going to be part of that streamlining and reduction of costs at head office. So a streamlining of the trots.com coverage, which has been outstanding. So is there a want to maybe try and get more coverage on racing.com as well, the free-to-air? Because those premium meetings that have been shown on a Saturday night, dovetailing off the back of Gallup's meetings, have been really successful.
Yeah, I think we've actually built a world-class presentation of harness racing, not just here in Australia, but anywhere in the world. And I want to continue to build on that. If there is an opportunity, we will explore any opportunity to be able to take harness racing to a wider audience. I think at the core of it, a lot of us have grown up with it. A lot of us are very familiar with it. I think it's our responsibility to find a way to connect, particularly to thoroughbred punters, on the back of Saturday afternoon into our key product on the Saturday night. And how we do that, we're going to continue to explore, Michael. And Ryan's exactly right. We would love that opportunity, providing we can deliver it cost effectively, and the returns are there. But we'll continue to work with Sky, our key, obviously, partner for delivery around Racing Vision. We'll continue to work with racing.com, and where appropriate with Trots Vision, we're ultimately, while we're scaling it back, we're not taking it off in terms of the live feed and the stream off the website. We want to encourage people to to still go there, but we're looking at ways that we can host that more efficiently and deliver a more streamlined version of that than we have in the last number of years.
It all sounds common sense to me. In the current world we're living in, you've got to look at ways that you can reduce your costs and try and increase your revenue, and this is what looks to be the best way to do it. When does this new racing calendar first begin?
Well, it's actually 1st of July, but we've been subtly moving towards that over the last couple of weeks, and we're starting to see some green shoots. Last week, in a really challenged wagering market at the moment across all states, across all codes, and while the last 2 weeks don't represent a historical pattern just yet, we're up 5% 2 weeks ago on prior year, and last week we're up 5% in terms of the early numbers. So, so I think we can certainly, there's a hell of a lot we can be doing to ensure that we are presenting ourselves appropriately and engaging the wagering customer out there to the best of our ability, and to engage the casual thoroughbred punter to connect again with harness racing. So we'll do our best to do that, and we'll continue to put our best foot forward to win in a really competitive marketplace.
Matt, appreciate you coming in, making the announcement for all of the harness racing fans, and there are so many out there. We get heaps of SMSs. Good luck with the new calendar. It sounds like it's already showing some positive signs.
Thanks, Michael.
That is Matt Isaacs, who is the boss of Harness Racing Victoria.